3 years after marrying into the Crown Prince's mansion, my husband converted to Buddhism and never touched me. Yet secretly, he brought back his adopted sister, once an imperial concubine, later demoted to a nun, to the mansion, merely because his adopted sister said she wanted to go down the mountain to see cherry blossoms. He ordered me to go to the top of the mountain to be a nun in her place. He said that after 7 days, when the cherry blossoms in the outskirts of the city faded, he would come to fetch me back. But the night before departure, I heard ambiguous noises coming from the Buddhist hall in the middle of the night. "Brother, didn't you promise to convert to Buddhism and stay with me for the rest of your life? Why did you still marry?" "I only married her to give an explanation to the family. I have never touched her. I have always been yours." Inside the room, the two indulged themselves before the Buddha, as if oblivious to heaven and earth. Standing outside the door, I felt as if I had fallen into an ice cave. It turned out that the once unruly crown prince had suddenly embraced Buddhism only to get a few more glances at his adopted sister. Marrying me, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion, was merely a ruse to deceive others. "Then I shall fulfill your wish." 7 days later, the Buddhist temple was engulfed in flames. Only a charred corpse remained, and by the emperor's side, a mysterious favored concubine appeared. As I sat in my room writing the divorce letter, my maid Azi rushed in panic. "Madam, it's terrible. When I was tidying the Buddhist hall today, I found this." I looked up, and she tremblingly took out a tattered red belliband. There were still some unclear stains on it. It was the one Zhai Guanli had torn apart last night. Seeing my silence, Azi stamped her feet anxiously. "Moreover, this afternoon, the Crown Prince entered his adopted sister's side room and hasn't come out yet. The Crown Prince is so muddle-headed. Even though that woman has been demoted from the palace to be a nun, she is still the emperor's concubine. How could he do such a thing? Could the rumors in the capital back then be true?" After speaking, she quickly covered her mouth and glanced around vigilantly, fearing that someone else might hear. I hummed in response. She was right. Zhai Guanli really had an improper relationship with his adopted sister Zhai Jinyan. Originally, I didn't believe it either. After all, one was a royal mansion's crown prince who had converted to Buddhism, and the other was a demoted nun who had long entered the palace as a concubine. Logically, they wouldn't do such a heinous thing. So even though we hadn't consummated the marriage in 3 years, I thought it was because Zhai Guanli had been practicing Buddhism for too long and needed time to adjust. But yesterday, without discussing it with me, Zhai Guanli brought Zhai Jinyan back to the mansion. After arriving, he stayed alone with her in the Buddhist hall for the entire day, not returning to his room even when the moon rose high in the sky. Unable to suppress the unease in my heart, I finally put on a coat and got up to look for him. Before taking a few steps, ambiguous and unbearable voices came from the Buddhist hall. I leaned against the crack of the door to look. Zhai Guanli knelt before the Buddha statue, his lips chanting as he twirled the prayer beads in his hand, just like usual. But inside his disheveled robe was Zhai Jinyan. Her face was flushed, and she sobbed delicately, as if she had suffered great grievances. "Brother, didn't you promise me to convert to Buddhism and stay with me for the rest of my life? Why did you still marry? If I hadn't begged you just now, you would still be thinking about those royal laws and Buddhist principles and refuse to look at me more. You're a liar, a big liar." When she said something that made her angry, Zhai Jinyan was so angry that she beat him randomly. Zhai Guanli was hit in a painful spot. He helplessly held her hand and whispered to comfort her. "I didn't lie to you. I only married Shunyo Huan to give an explanation to the family. I have never touched her. I am yours, always only yours." With a coquettish cry from Zhai Jinyan, Zhai Guanli leaned down and kissed her. The two hugged frantically, as if they wanted to crush each other and never be separated again. I stood at the door, tears streaming down my face. The day before yesterday, I had tempted Zhai Guanli like this. But he pushed me away directly. He said he had already embraced Buddhism. cut off all emotions and desires, and told me not to do such shameless things again. Now it seemed that it was not that he had cut off all emotions and desires, but that he just didn't want to do this with me. I watched them self-destructively until dawn, then stumbled back to my room, but the image of Zhai Guanli exhausted at the last moment was deeply etched in my mind, lingering. It was not until I witnessed this scene with my own eyes that I understood he did not love me. My thoughts returned to the present. I endured the bitterness and was about to write the last word of the divorce letter when Zhai Guanli led his adopted sister over. As soon as Zhai Jinyan stepped into the room, she knelt down with a thud. "Sister-in-law, I heard that you are angry because I came uninvited. Please don't blame brother. It was me who begged him to take me down the mountain to see the cherry blossoms in the outskirts of the city." Zhai Guanli hurried to help her, his voice anxious. "Jinyan, what nonsense are you talking about? My home is your home. No one dares to be angry." Zhai Jinyan raised her head timidly, deliberately revealing the red marks on her neck. Those were the places Zhai Guanli had stroked and kissed. Thinking of the ambiguous scenes last night, I inevitably felt a surge of nausea. Zhai Guanli had already changed into a plain monk's robe, with a string of prayer beads wrapped around his right hand. He was once again that cold and self-possessed Buddhist disciple. Where was the madness from last night? He stood in front of me and said slowly, "Yohuan, I need your help with something. You also know that Jinyan was demoted from the palace to be a nun. She can't leave the temple for too long. So I have to ask you to take her place in the Buddhist temple for 7 days." I raised my eyebrows and looked at him, for the first time. Zhai Guanli showed a somewhat earnest expression in front of me. "I know this is indeed a bit difficult for you, but Jinyan has been alone and miserable for too long. Now she just wants to see the cherry blossoms. As her brother, I really can't bear it and shouldn't refuse. Don't worry, after 7 days, when the cherry blossoms in the outskirts of the city fade, I will come to fetch you back to the mansion." His voice was calm, but he was saying something extremely absurd. I almost asked in a choked voice, "Zhai Guanli, do you know what you are asking me to do? Taking the place of a deposed concubine to practice Buddhism is a crime of deceiving the emperor, punishable by beheading the entire clan." Both Zhai Guanli and Zhai Jinyan's expressions changed. His consultative gaze suddenly turned gloomy, and he even directly broke the prayer beads in his hand. "Nonsense. I have already arranged everything with the Buddhist temple. As long as you stay there obediently for 7 days, no one will know about this, let alone implicate the family. And I've already said it, Jinyan hasn't seen cherry blossoms in many years. What's wrong with you?" As sister-in-law, enduring a few days of hardship, the prayer beads hit my face, making my eyes water. The matter was too absurd. Countless emotions surged in my chest. Finally, I asked in a trembling voice, "Zhai Guanli, I also like to see cherry blossoms. After 3 years of marriage, have you ever taken me to see them?" At the moment our eyes met, astonishment crossed Zhai Guanli's face, which quickly returned to calm. "You are free. When can't you go to see them if you want? Jinyan is different." At this time, Zhai Jinyan, who was kneeling on the ground, suddenly kowtowed, tears lingering in her eyes. "Sister-in-law, Jinyan is really not greedy. I just want to see the cherry blossoms with brother one more time. Just 7 days. Please fulfill me." Zhai Guanli hugged her tightly. When he looked at me again, his tone was full of reproach. "Shen Yohuan, Jinyan has begged you so humbly. What more do you want?" Zhai Jinyan shook her head timidly. Forget it. If sister-in-law is unwilling, it's fine. The Buddhist temple is harsh. The legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion can't endure such hardship. Brother, I will go back to the Buddhist temple now and not disturb you and sister-in-law. After speaking, she broke free from Zhai Guanli's embrace and ran out of the room. Zhai Guanli was so anxious that he followed her. The last look he gave me before turning around was filled with anger, stabbing my heart like a knife. A feeling of depression blocked my chest, and my weariness grew stronger. I waved my hand and called the maid over. Arzi, bring my suitcase. I want to go back to the Prime Minister's mansion. I had lived in the Crown Prince's mansion for 3 years, and I didn't have many things. Most of them were things I had bought for Zhai Guanli, the cassock and monk's robe I had woven by hand, the prayer beads and Buddha pendants I had knelt and begged for by climbing the mountain, the sandalwood I had asked someone to buy from Tianzhu thousands of miles away. And even the scriptures I had copied day and night without sleeping filled a whole bookshelf. Before I knew it, these things piled up like a mountain when packed, but my own belongings couldn't even fill half a wooden box. Yet Zhai Guanli had never glanced at them. The more attentive I was, the more annoyed he became. Shenyo Huan, Buddhist sacred objects should not be contaminated with feminine energy. Put away your shameless thoughts. Thinking of these words again, my heart was as cold as ice. I whispered an order. Arzi, take these things and burn them. Arzi replied yes and was about to call a few servants in when a loud noise came from the courtyard. I looked out the window in confusion, but my hand was suddenly clamped. It was Zhai Guanli. He was shrouded in a terrifying low pressure, and dragged me out of the room without hesitation. Shenyo Huan, come out and see what you've done. Beside the tree in the corner of the courtyard, Zhai Jinyan lay unconscious on the ground. No matter how anxiously the doctor called, she didn't wake up. As soon as we arrived, she seemed to have a telepathic connection, slowly opened her eyes, and stretched out her arms to Zhai Guanli aggrievedly. Brother, my leg hurts so much. Zhai Guanli let go of my hand, rushed over in 3 steps and hugged her. Jinyan, why did you suddenly lose your mind and climb over the wall? Zhai Jinyan in his arms sobbed uncontrollably. Brother, Jinyan really wants to see the cherry blossoms so much. Thinking that I have to go back to the Buddhist temple tomorrow, I wanted to climb over the wall secretly to see them and fulfill a wish. Who knew I fell? I didn't mean to make brother worry. Ah, it hurts. Her foot suddenly twitched. Zhai Guanli anxiously lifted her skirt. When he saw the bloodstains, his face turned even darker. He directly snatched the medicine from the doctor and carefully applied it to her. Zhai Jinyan bit her pale lip and cried out in pain from time to time, but her tear-filled eyes glanced at me provocatively, her voice soft and delicate. Brother, don't blame sister-in-law for not helping. After all, I am a criminal. What right do I have to see cherry blossoms? Zhai Guanli's hand paused. Probably not expecting her to say that, he looked at me with grief and indignation. Did you hear that, Shenyo Huan? Even though Jinyan is injured, she is still speaking up for you. Although Jinyan is my adopted sister, we grew up together and have a deep friendship for many years. As sister-in-law, can't you help with this for the sake of our marital relationship? The eyes of the servants around turned to me in unison, as if I were the one who had done wrong. I laughed angrily and retorted, Zhai Guanli, what kind of marital bond do we have? After 3 years of marriage, have you ever fulfilled your duties as a husband? Zhai Guanli frowned. Also losing his temper, I told you before we got married that I am a Buddhist disciple and must observe precepts. I cannot be intimate with women. Are you only finding this out today? It was like hearing the funniest joke. I stared at his hand around Zhai Jinyan's waist. Then what is the Buddhist disciple doing now? Zhai Guanli was stunned for a moment, but tightened his arm even more, defending himself. Jinyan is my sister, she's different from you. As soon as the words left his mouth, Zhai Guanli's face also looked unnatural. We stood in a stalemate. His expression remained obscure. After a long while, he seemed to concede, saying slowly, after 7 days, when you come back from the Buddhist temple, will you do it then? I promise you. After that, I will live a good life with you. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhai Jinyan suddenly clung tightly to his sleeve, but Zhai Guanli didn't notice. When our eyes met, his were filled with determination and deep affection I had never seen before, but I knew it wasn't for me. For 3 years of marriage, I had been chasing his back, only asking for one more glance from him. Now he was willing to look at me more, but it was for another woman. It's too late, Zhai Guanli. I shook my head, my face full of stubbornness. I will not go to the Buddhist temple. I was about to hand over the divorce letter hidden in my sleeve when a palm strike knocked me unconscious. When I woke up again, I was already in the Buddhist temple. My neck throbbed with dull pain as I struggled to sit up from the bed. Everything I could see in this meditation room was so luxurious it didn't look like a harsh Buddhist temple. Looking down, I found I had been changed into a nun's robe at some point. Zhai Jinyan pushed the door open and laughed coquettishly. Sister-in-law, you're awake. Oh, no, I should call you aunt now. She was already wearing my clothes, with a married woman's hairstyle, spinning proudly in front of me. Brother said I look much better in these than you do. Look, he even gave me the family heirloom. She shook her sleeve, revealing a green jade bracelet on her wrist. So that's why. On our wedding day, Zhai Guanli had specifically taken this bracelet from my hand, saying it was too precious and he would keep it for me. It was for Zhai Jinyan all along. Not a single ripple stirred in my heart. Zhai Jinyan sat on the edge of the bed, pretending to be sentimental, swinging her legs innocently. Sister-in-law, actually, taking my place as a nun is also a kind of liberation for you. Did you know, for 3 years, his thoughts have been on me. She threw over a stack of letters from Zhai Guanli. My hands trembled as I opened them. Every word in the letters was sincere, every sentence tender, filled with concern and worry for his adopted sister. Fearing the Buddhist temple would be cold in winter, he sent fine charcoal and silk. Fearing the coarse cloth nun's robes would be uncomfortable, he had someone weave an entire wardrobe of robes from silk worth 10,000 taels. Fearing she would be lonely during festivals, he went to the mountain to practice Buddhism for 7 days to accompany her on every festival: Dragon Boat Festival, Mid-Autumn Festival, Spring Festival, big and small. Only I would foolishly light a candle and wait for him until dawn. When I came to my senses, the yellowed letters were completely torn to pieces in my hands. Zhai Jinyan glanced at the scattered paper scraps on the floor, blinked her eyes, and her triumphant look grew stronger. Sister-in-law, you should have known long ago that brother doesn't love you. Otherwise, why wouldn't he touch you for 3 years? She pulled down her collar, revealing her snow-white chest covered with deep and shallow hickeys and bite marks. The night before last night, and just now in the carriage, brother couldn't help himself with me. That's how men are when they first experience desire. Unfortunately, you'll never taste it in your life. Zhai Jinyan looked at me as if I were a defeated opponent. I found it absurd, speaking slowly and calmly. Zhai Jinyan, do you think I, the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion, will let the two of you scoundrels off the hook? Zhai Jinyan suddenly changed, raising her voice. Shen Youhuan, do you really think you can return to the mansion after 7 days? Dream on. She suddenly pulled out a large pair of scissors and grabbed me by the neck, with one cut. A sharp pain shot through my scalp as all my hair fell to the floor. I covered the back of my head in disbelief as warm liquid streamed down. I raised my hand and slapped Zhai Jinyan hard. She cried out in pain, collapsing to the floor. Brother, I was just trying to be kind and cut sister-in-law's hair to make her look more like a nun, but she dared to hit me. Only then did I notice Zhai Guanli was standing at the door. The cold eyes that were always so indifferent held an inexplicable emotion when they looked at me. Zhai Jinyan's smile froze. She looked at the distracted Zhai Guanli in confusion, her voice even more aggrieved. Brother, hurry and speak up for me. Zhai Guanli helplessly tapped the tip of her nose, then turned to me. Youhuan, all nuns in the Buddhist temple shave their heads. You shouldn't be an exception. Jinyan really was doing this for your own good. He pulled out a cherry blossom branch from behind and inserted it into the vase on the table, his gaze even carrying a hint of flattery. Youhuan, I can't accompany you to see the cherry blossoms this year, so this morning, I specially had someone pick this branch for you as compensation. Do you like it? I looked at the vase. Most of the stamens on the branch were gone, and the remaining few flowers were withered and lifeless. A gust of wind blew, and the last few petals fell to the floor. It was as if the final thread of obsession in my heart had also scattered, countless words crowded in my throat, but in the end, I only asked mockingly, Zhai Guanli, after 3 years of marriage, this is the fate I get. Zhai Guanli frowned slightly, but finally took Zhai Jinyan's hand. Yohuan, I promise I'll take you to see the cherry blossoms next year. Will you wait a little longer? In 7 days, I'll come to fetch you. Walking quickly towards the carriage parked at the temple gate, holding Zhai Jinyan's hand, Zhai Guanli felt an inexplicable unease. Avoiding the strange looks from the monks along the way, he comforted himself that it would be fine. He had bribed the entire temple, and no one would dare to expose this. Yet his thoughts kept drifting to the divorce letter he had seen on Shen Youhuan. Zhai Guanli couldn't understand why Shen Youhuan, who had been obedient for 3 years, would want a divorce. The sorrowful look in her eyes when they parted earlier filled him with an unexplained fear, as if she really didn't want him anymore. Could it be? She minded his relationship with Zhai Jinyan. Thinking this, Zhai Guanli let go of Zhai Jinyan's hand. She looked back at him, then climbed into the carriage first. After he got in, she pulled down her clothes again, leaning against him softly, her breath like orchid. Brother, I wasn't satisfied earlier. Let's continue. But he helped her pull up her clothes. The lingering ambiguous scent gave him a headache. Zhai Guanli said softly, Jinyan, we should go back to being siblings. After accompanying you for 7 more days, I should return to the secular world and treat Youhuan well. After saying this, Zhai Guanli finally felt a weight lifted from his heart. Not noticing the resentment that flashed in Zhai Jinyan's eyes, he even considered turning back to talk to Shen Youhuan again. To tell her not to worry, she didn't have to do any work in the temple, didn't have to recite scriptures if she didn't want to. In 7 days, after Zhai Jinyan had seen the cherry blossoms, he would definitely take her home. But instead of taking Zhai Jinyan to see the cherry blossoms, the two of them wasted the entire 7 days in bed. Time and time again, endless. Every time he tried to get up and return to the boundaries of siblings, heavy rain would suddenly pour, strong winds would blow, and their indulgence would continue. Each time, Zhai Guanli told himself, this is the last time, just one last time. As if the two of them had had an absurd dream of being husband and wife. After this, they would owe each other nothing, never entanglement again. On the 7th day, Zhai Jinyan finally couldn't hold on any longer and fell into a deep sleep in bed. Zhai Guanli got up silently. The sky was already dark, but he didn't want to delay for a moment. He urged, Jinyan, we should go now, back to the Buddhist temple. The person in bed only rolled over, covering herself with the quilt. I'm so tired. Brother, can we go tomorrow? Let me sleep a little longer. Zhai Guanli's resolve softened. He sighed and finally agreed. It was only 1 day late. Shen Youhuan would understand. He washed up casually, put on his robe, and walked out of the room. Even though it was late at night, the sky was dimly lit. Flames and thick smoke rose from the mountain east of the city. The steward ran over in panic. It's terrible, young master. The Buddhist temple is on fire. Madam is still inside. The fire burned the Buddhist temple to the ground. Fortunately, most of the disciples survived. Except for a charred corpse in a remote meditation room, it was identified as the deposed imperial concubine, Zhai Jinyan. Zhai Guanli stood in the ruins for a long time, clutching an iron lock tightly in his hand. Who ordered you to lock her up? Moreover, the coroner he had summoned found that his Youhuan had suffered inhumane torture before her death. Her hands and feet were broken, and she hadn't eaten for 3 days and nights. Hearing this, the air around Zhai Guanli suddenly turned icy cold. Did I not tell you to treat her well? The abbot didn't dare to breathe in front of him, almost kneeling. It was Zhai. No, it was the young mistress's order. He covered his mouth. He had already committed a capital crime by accepting 10,000 taels of gold to help Zhai Guanli switch the women. Now that the prime minister's legitimate daughter had died inexplicably in his temple, if the matter was exposed. Even dying 800 times wouldn't be enough. Besides, hadn't this boy from the Zhai family had no feelings for Shen Youhuan, but instead been deeply in love with his own adopted sister? Being burned to death was cruel, but at least it had fulfilled the love between him and his adopted sister, the tragic couple. What was this sad act now? Contempt rose in the abbot's heart, but he was terrified to look up by a sharp glare from Zhai Guanli. He then plucked up the courage to persuade, "Young master, this is heaven's will to fulfill you too. Please accept my condolences, otherwise, we will all be executed along with our entire clans." Before he could finish speaking, Zhai Guanli kicked him hard in the chest, his voice fierce. "What do you mean heaven's will to fulfill us? How dare you talk nonsense? I'll take your life." The coroner bowed his head again to report that the body was too badly burned to be identified. But Zhai Guanli immediately recognized the jade bead on the corpse's neck and shoulder, carved with the character Zhai. This was a prayer bead he had accidentally dropped, only to be picked up by Shen Youhuan. When he went to ask for it back, Shen Youhuan had already strung it on a red cord and worn it around her neck. She refused to return it no matter what, insisting on keeping it as her first gift from him, watching how cherished it was to her. An inexplicable warmth surged in Zhai Guanli's heart, and he simply let her keep it. Zhai Guanli knelt down, picked up the jade bead, his mind blank, murmuring, "Youhuan, didn't we agree I'd come to fetch you after 7 days?" He refused to believe Shen Youhuan was dead. He only thought she had run away. So he lived on the mountain for a whole month, searching for her with his servants, but even after turning the mountain upside down, there was no trace of her. When he returned to the mansion exhausted, an anxious figure suddenly pounced on him. It was Zhai Jinyan, beating and hitting him. "Brother, where have you been these days? Do you know, the people in your mansion have been mistreating me?" Zhai Guanli looked up. Sure enough, the door to the side room was smashed, and a few servants not far away hung their heads, glancing timidly in this direction. Daring not to speak, Zhai Jinyan pulled his sleeve and cried. Her body as thin as a bamboo pole. He only felt annoyed, pulling his hand away. "Jinyan, don't come out casually. Recently, people from the Prime Minister's mansion have been looking for Youhuan. If they see you, the entire Zhai family will be ruined." Zhai Jinyan ignored him and cried even louder, "Youhuan, Youhuan, brother, now you only think about that bitch. Isn't it just right that she's dead? You can just tell the Prime Minister's mansion she died of illness. Ask them to accept their condolences, and marry me into the mansion in a few days. Isn't that perfect? Brother, have you forgotten you said you'd marry me when we were children?" Zhai Jinyan screamed at the top of her lungs, making Zhai Guanli's head ache. He raised his hand high, but couldn't bring himself to strike. "Jinyan, that was when we were children. You've already entered the palace as a concubine, and I'm already married. We were both wrong those 7 days. We can't keep making mistakes, and you shouldn't take it seriously. Now that things have come to this, you can't go back to the Buddhist temple. I'll send someone to take you to Jiangnan to find a good family. From now on, we'll never see each other again." After speaking, he winked at the servants waiting on both sides, who immediately dragged her away. Zhai Jinyan struggled and screamed frantically, only to be thrown back into the side room. This time, 5 iron locks were hung on the door, but her cries never stopped. Zhai Guanli was irritable, whispering to the steward, "Make Zhai Jinyan behave, tell her to stop yelling, find a way to send her out of the city the day after tomorrow." The steward replied yes and quietly retreated. Zhai Guanli stood alone in the courtyard for a long time before summoning the courage to enter Shen Youhuan's inner chamber. Everything about her inside had been cleaned up completely. He wandered around blankly, hoping to find a trace of the past, but searched until late at night and found nothing. Zhai Guanli finally collapsed, kneeling on the ground and weeping bitterly. From that day on, people in the capital whispered that the crown prince had gone mad from practicing Buddhism every day. Apart from going up the mountain, He locked himself in his room, copying the Lotus Sutra over and over again. None of them knew he just wanted to see that person again. But Zhai Guanli never expected to actually see her again. At the Mid-Autumn Palace banquet, the person he had been thinking about day and night was sitting beside the emperor. Having become concubine WN, I had long anticipated that I would see Zhai Guanli again. Across the dancing maidens, our eyes met, and I couldn't help but freeze. A hand around my waist squeezed gently, and I let out a soft exclamation, glaring angrily at Xiao Chen. Clearly the current emperor, he was like a mischievous child in front of me, often doing absurd things. I frowned. Did you summon him to the palace? Xiao Chen nodded matter-of-factly, his gaze turning scrutinizing. Why? Do you still have lingering feelings for him? I shook my head. No, it's all in the past. After Zhai Guanli left me at the Buddhist temple that day, I had thought about escaping back to the Prime Minister's mansion to report him, but the entire temple was bribed by the two siblings. No matter how I tried to run, I would be caught and brought back. The abbot directly lashed me with a whip. I heard that before entering the temple, you were the legitimate daughter of the Prime Minister's mansion. You should know what the crime of deceiving the emperor entails, right? If you run away and expose this matter, do you think the Prime Minister's mansion can stay out of it? I was stunned. The abbot was right. Even though I had been abducted here, I was still Zhai Guanli's wife and had taken the place of the deposed concubine to practice Buddhism. Before, I had been such a foolish woman, deeply in love with Zhai Guanli, willing to go through fire and water for him, who would believe I was coerced. Enduring the pain of the whip lashing my body, I had to give up the idea of escaping. Day after day, I endured endless torment. On the 6th day, having only eaten a moldy steamed bun, I collapsed weakly in the Buddhist hall. A paper umbrella was held above my head, and a deep male voice said, "The Zhai family is truly bold, daring to touch my deposed concubine. But this is not bad either. Insolence. Kneel immediately when you see the emperor." I instinctively stood up, but when I saw who it was, I knelt down again with a thud. "Your Majesty, please calm your anger." Xiao Chen squatted down, lifting my chin. "I've heard that the eldest young lady of the Prime Minister's mansion is knowledgeable and reasonable. To think you would do such a heinous thing, it really opens my eyes. Should I exile the entire Prime Minister's mansion, or execute you all?" I panicked, kowtowing repeatedly. "Please spare my family, Your Majesty. I will submit to any punishment you impose." After a long silence, Xiao Chen chuckled. "Then enter the palace and be my concubine." On the 7th night, I sat alone in the meditation room, the hidden hopes in my heart fading away little by little. Zhai Guanli really didn't come. When Xiao Chen's men brought an unidentified corpse from the mass grave, I made a new plan. Taking off the jade bead I had been wearing around my neck, I threw it casually on the ground. As the carriage taking me into the palace slowly descended the mountain, flames blazed behind me, as if burning away my past along with the temple. I was no longer Shen Youhuan. I was the mysterious favored concubine beside the emperor, concubine WN. I had always heard that the emperor of the new dynasty was busy with state affairs and not very interested in harem matters, but after entering the palace, he slept in my palace almost every night. Getting along with him wasn't as difficult as I thought. In fact, I could even feel a trace of thoughtfulness. It was as if I had been his concubine from the very beginning. It wasn't until I saw Zhai Guanli again at the Mid-Autumn Palace banquet that I realized I hadn't thought of him in a long time. At that moment, his gaze was fixed on me, as if it would burn two holes in my body. I had thought that after my fake death, he would live a happy life with his beloved adopted sister. But now, he looked extremely haggard. He was still wearing that familiar cassock, but it now hung loosely on his frame. His face was sallow and thin, unrecognizable, puzzled. I snuggled closer into Xiao Chen's arms. When I looked up again, Zhai Guanli was gone. I instinctively reached out to look for him, but a broad hand covered my eyes. Xiao Chen's voice was tinged with displeasure. Concubine Wn, don't stare blindly. Do you not want to sleep tonight? And then came a sleepless night. When I woke up cursing from the bed, holding my aching waist, Xiao Chen had already gone to the morning court, but an uninvited guest broke into the palace. His holy cassock was covered in dust. Zhai Guanli stumbled to his feet, grabbed my hand, and pulled me toward the door. Yo Huan, I've come to...
Seeing my serious expression, Xiao Chen finally replied, I just don't like him. Since he insists on pretending to be deeply affectionate, I'll let him show how deep that affection is. Besides, he bullied you for so many years. Don't you want me to avenge you? That boy from the Zhai family, when Zhai Jinyan was in my palace. He came to the palace every day saying he was driving away nightmares for her, staying guard all night. I wanted to see what they were up to. So I found an excuse to send her out of the palace casually. I didn't expect them to be bold enough to commit adultery. But it's fine, at least it let me pick you up. It's not a loss. He lowered his head to look at me, infinitely gentle. It can be regarded as compensation for issuing the imperial edict too late back then. I suddenly remembered that before my marriage, my father had mentioned that the emperor had considered summoning me to the palace, but at that time, my heart was filled only with Zhai Guanli. When I heard the news, I even made a scene, insisting on marrying Zhai Guanli as soon as possible. If I hadn't been so stubborn back then, would things have been different? Xiao Chen ordered the beatings to grow harsher each time, reducing him to a complete walking corpse. Yet Zhai Guanli still refused to give up. Finally, one day he crawled to my palace hall, covered in bloodstains, begging desperately for me to spare him just one glance. To see his resolve, but I stepped back in disgust, covering my mouth. Zhai Guanli, even if the Buddha himself were here today, or Zhai Jinyan, they would both say you have no heart at all. I placed a hand on my slightly swollen belly, my voice cold and indifferent. Leave, I am already carrying the dragon heir. There is not the slightest possibility left between us. Zhai Guanli fell gravely ill. The Zhai family came to the palace, bewildered as to why their son, who had merely entered the palace to practice Buddhism, deserved such a brutal punishment. Xiao Chen ordered them to come see me. The moment the elder couple saw who I was, their legs buckled beneath them, and they collapsed to the ground, staring at me in disbelief, over and over. Yo Huan, how did you end up in the palace? And as the emperor's concubine no less, Guanli told us clearly that you had gone to Jiangnan to recuperate. I shot a glance at the palace maid standing beside me. She bowed respectfully and handed over a slip of paper. The person who went to Jiangnan is someone else entirely. If you too wish to investigate, feel free to do so. As for me, I am no longer the Shin Yo Huan you speak of. I am concubine Wn. I hope that next time we meet, you will not address me incorrectly lest you bring trouble upon yourselves. The moment they saw the name written on the slip of paper, the color drained from the elder Zhai's faces. They scrambled to their knees, kowtowed frantically in thanks, and fled in haste. I only found out later that the Zhai family sent men to Jiangnan, but found no trace of the person they were looking for, because Zhai Jinyan had returned first, her belly swollen with child. She knelt before the ancestral hall of the Zhai mansion, weeping and wailing, claiming she carried the Zhai family's bloodline and demanding that Zhai Guanli marry her. But to her shock, the elder Zhais met her with icy indifference. They hastily sealed off all news of her return, terrified that Xiao Chen would get wind of it. Zhai Guanli, lying on his deathbed, did not even deign to see her. He only uttered 2 words, "Bastard child." Zhai Jinyan flew into a rage. She bit down on her finger and wrote a blood letter, threatening to submit a memorial to the throne exposing every last secret. But she never even made it past the Zhai mansion's front gate. A white silk rope coiled around her, and she was dragged away and thrown down a well. Zhai Guanli did not live to see the end of that winter night. It was said that on the day he died, he still clung tightly to that jade bead, chanting my name over and over, praying to the Buddha that we might be husband and wife in the next life. When the tale reached Xiao Chen's ears, he flew into a furious rage. He had his men fetch the red thread of the moon god, and wrapped it around my wrist, coil after coil, in every lifetime. For all eternity you shall be mine.